Welcome, everyone. I am Elizabeth Angel, the editorial director of Romper, and I'm your host for today's It Starts With Mom Live event. Today, we are focusing our attention on women who are catalysts for change, mothers who are using their voices and talents to support and affect change for parents and families. March of Dimes launched It Starts With Mom to connect you with other expecting new and seasoned mothers to help you feel empowered as you navigate pregnancy and motherhood. For more than 80 years, March of Dimes has pioneered research, led programs, provided educational resources, and championed policy changes so that every mother and baby can have the best possible start. Their mission is to be there for mothers and parents of new babies, to encourage you, support you, empower you. That obviously resonates quite a bit for us at Romper. Our goal is to be a community and a resource for parents of all walks of life, to tell their stories and answer their questions. It is a thrill for us to be the media partner for March of Dimes and help amplify their message of empowering mothers and celebrating babies and families. We have a great program lined up today, and first up, in just a few minutes, is my interview with an especially inspiring guest, Illinois Senator Tammy Duckworth. Thanks again for joining us. Let's get started. Welcome. I am so thrilled to be here with Senator Tammy Duckworth. And by here, I mean my living room, but with her nonetheless. I'm not sure she needs an introduction, but I'm going to give her one anyway, because your bio, Senator Duckworth, is so extraordinary. You have, of course, been the junior senator from Illinois since 2016. Before that, she served 2 terms in the House of Representatives and as Assistant Secretary in the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. She is also, of course, an Iraq War veteran and a Purple Heart recipient. Senator Duckworth flew Black Hawk helicopters in Iraq, and in 2004, her helicopter was hit by an RPG. As a result of her injuries, Senator Duckworth lost both her legs and partial use of one arm. She is the first female double amputee war veteran to serve in Congress, the first Thai American woman elected to Congress, and the first woman with a disability elected to Congress. She is also the first senator to give birth while in office. She and her husband, Brian, are the parents of 2 daughters. It is because of her work as an advocate for families and parents that the March of Dimes has asked her to be here today, and we are so thrilled. I wanted to start, Senator Duckworth, by just acknowledging that this is not an ordinary conversation because this isn't an ordinary time for Americans. It's been incredibly difficult, and parents in particular are struggling and feeling stretched beyond their limits. What do you say to parents these days when you meet them?
That we are in this together, and I get it because I have been homeschooling my daughter, my pre-K now kindergartner since March, and I am not a trained teacher. And studies show that working parents, especially working moms, are actually doing 18% more work on average than they were before the pandemic hit. You would have thought that telecommuting from home would have made things easier. Actually, it's not, because we're now doing more laundry, we're cooking more, we're doing everything is more while we're working from home. And so I get it. And I tell them, know that there are those of us in the halls of Congress who are going through the same thing, and we get it, and we've got your back.
Well, I know, I crave that encouragement and that leadership. So that is wonderful to hear. As I mentioned in your bio, you are the first of so many things. I also wanted, what advice do you have for mothers and all women who are breaking new ground and trying to be the first? It can be lonely to be the first.
It can be, but I say you do you. I wasn't trying to be any of the first. It just happened because I was pursuing what I wanted to do, and I didn't let anything stop me, because and I ended up being the first. So it wasn't so much that I was trying to be the first senator to give birth in office. I was just trying to have a baby. It just so happened that there have not been very many senators of childbearing age, not very many women in the Senate. I mean, the men have been having babies for 200 years. But to actually give birth, and I gave birth to my daughter 2 weeks after I turned 50. So I wasn't trying to be the first. I went through 10 years of fertility struggles,
Yeah.
So I say just stick with your passion and don't let anything stop you. And you can get there. But if you're trying to be the first, just for trying to be the first of anything, it rarely works out well when that is your goal.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned giving birth while in office. I would love to hear a little bit more about what that experience was like. And although I hope that you gave birth in a hospital, not in your office. And just, were you surprised by the lack of rules in place to support mothers in breastfeeding in your workplace?
I was and I wasn't. I was because I had been in the House of Representative for 2 terms, so 4 years, and I'd given birth to my first daughter in the House. And the House allows you to bring your children onto the floor. And it actually started with Speaker Pelosi. The first time she was Speaker back in 2006, she actually changed the rules 14 years ago to allow children to be brought onto the floor of the House up to the age of 12. And so there had always been kids on the House floor. And you have to vote in person. So there's no proxy voting when it comes to legislation.
Mhm.
So when I came to the Senate and I was getting ready to give birth, and then I found out that you can't actually bring children on the floor of the Senate. And I said, well, then how am I going to vote? They're like, well, you can't vote. So, well, I have to do my job. You won't let me proxy vote. But then you won't let me bring my baby on the floor. They're like, well, just leave your baby outside. I'm like, who do I leave her with? I can't leave her with a staff member because my staff members are federal employees, and that would be a violation of ethics and law. So, but I'm not going to leave a newborn baby in a baby carrier in the hallway. What am I supposed to do? And that's when we realized, okay, well, we're going to have to start changing the rules before this baby gets here. So we actually started working on it when I was only about 3 months pregnant, and it took the rest of my pregnancy to get the rules changed.
Well, it's an extraordinary to think about. As you said, there have been men with children in the Senate for as long as there's been a Senate, and the fact that nobody had ever thought of needing this before until a woman got there is pretty extraordinary. Was it difficult to get to unanimous consent?
It was a little bit at first. Like I said, it took well over 6 months of negotiations. At the end, it was not because we got a new chairman of the Rules Committee. So prior to that, it was a previous senator who'd been a senator for many, many decades, very old school, male senator, been there for a long time. And he asked questions like, but if we let her bring her baby onto the floor, then maybe there would be someday 10 babies on the floor. To which Amy Klobuchar, who is the top Democrat on the committee, said, that sounds wonderful. But the Republican chairman was like, he was not having that. Then he asked very interesting questions like, well, what's the dress code for the baby going to be? Because the Senate has these very arcane dress codes. No open-toed shoes. You can't show your arms. No hats. You must wear a blazer. Now they've relaxed the dress code a little bit, and so women can just wear dresses without a blazer. And so I was like, well, I can try to keep her to adhere to the dress code, I guess, but I'm leaving the beanie on her head. She's going to get cold. I'm not taking her hat off.
No, well,
you have to wear shoes, these and so he was asking me all these crazy questions about a baby, for crying out loud. And then it turned out what it was they were worried that I would breastfeed on the floor. So all of this stuff was just a smokescreen. And finally, one of the Republican women senators came up to me and said, Tammy, the guys have asked me to do this. And let me just tell you, this is stupid, but I'm going to ask you because all the guys have asked. They just want to know if you're going to breastfeed on the floor in front of them. And I said, I'm going to feed my baby if she's hungry. But my plan to do this is so that I can vote. I'm not exactly going to whip a boob out in front of a bunch of 70-year-old men just for the just for the fun of it. I will feed my baby if she needs to be fed. But that's not why I'm doing this. I'm doing this so I can actually serve my constituents who elected me senator, and I need to cast my vote. And then we got a new chairman of the Rules Committee, a new, and Roy Blunt, a Republican from Missouri, even before he became chairman, came up to me and said, Tammy, let me just tell you, when I was in the House, I appreciated being able to bring my child onto the floor. And so I'm going to support you. And as soon as he became chairman, he changed the rules because he remembered what it was like when he was in the House under Speaker Pelosi, that he could bring his children, and he loved it.
Yeah. Well, I suppose there is some hope for bipartisan agreement on
Yes.
babies at least.
On babies at least, yes.
Well, I think it's an extraordinary thing to hear about, because every working parent or just mother really who has struggled with, doing anything while trying to feed their child knows a little bit about what you went through, but to think of doing it in the halls of Congress is extraordinary. I would love to hear more also about your work with the Friendly Airports for Mothers Act, which, it seems like a simple thing, but that act ensures that mothers have access to safe, clean, and accessible lactation rooms, which, can make all the difference between being able to safely feed your baby or pump and express milk, or not to be able to on a long journey.
Well, that's exactly it. A lot of working moms have to stop breastfeeding far earlier than they would have, because there's just no accommodations for them to be able to express breast milk when they're at the workplace or when they are traveling. And I noticed because, and here's the thing, I didn't even notice this problem until I had my first child. So I thought that I was a pretty aware, socially progressive Democrat. And I thought this was not something I was aware of. So this says something about having real representation, the importance of diversity in the halls of power, because when I started traveling, I would have to catch a flight on Monday evening to come to DC to work. And then on Thursday night, I was catching a flight home to Illinois, and I'm trying to express breast milk every 3 hours. And I tried to express breast milk in the airport, and I didn't have a place to do it. And they pointed me to the handicap stall of the public toilet. And I said, well, I'm not going to do that. That's gross. That's disgusting. You wouldn't ask me to make a sandwich sitting on the toilet. Why would you expect me to express breast milk there? And I said, plus I have to plug in my breast pump someplace. Where should I do that? And literally the airport authority told me, go plug in. You can use the outlet next to where the people are charging their cell phones. I said, you want me to go put the breast pump on and plug in next to this dude that's charging his cell phone? Are you kidding me? You're going to arrest me for indecent exposure, let alone there, And so that's when I realized, wow, we have a problem. So I started working this legislation. And I will tell you that it was able to become bipartisan because I went and I found Republican doctors, congressmen who were doctors, and they understood the importance of breast milk to a baby's first year of life and the outcome medically. And once they co-sponsored my bill, the other Republicans got on the bill, and we were able to pass it in 2 stages. The first stage was medium and large airports, which was like 95% of airports. And then just a few months ago, we passed it for the rest of the airports. So if you're, catching a feeder airport to go to a hub and spoke kind of a thing, that you can actually also be at the small airports. And actually it passed unanimously, and President Trump signed it. So even in this crazy time, it can still pass.
Proof that it's not all gridlock. I love it.
Not all gridlock. Yeah,
no,
you have to be careful about who your allies are and find the good partners in the fight.
Yeah. Well, that's a lesson. I think that though, that, again, that lesson that if we can make it just something you could take for granted, that you would be able to find a safe, clean space to do this almost anywhere you went. Think of how much easier it would be for so many parents who wouldn't have to ask, who wouldn't have to seek it out or ask for what feels like special treatment, even though it should be very basic.
Right.
I wanted to switch lanes a little bit and ask you, the recession that we're in right now has affected working women and mothers at unprecedented rates. It is, really shocking how many women have been pushed out of the workforce as a result of this. And, it's not like most mothers are doing this for extra pocket money. They're supporting their families, feeding their children. What would you like to see done for women and families with the next stimulus bill? And you'll notice my optimism that I said there will be, in fact, be a bill. I have great hope.
I have great hopes too. I mean, I think we need to immediately send another payment out to all families, and to include in that. And I had an amendment also that would allow the $500 per dependent payment to go to newborn babies as well. So the parents of babies born in 2020, previously under the previous bill, did not qualify if your babies were born in 2020. So my bill would allow you, if you had a baby born in 2020, you can claim the $500 as well. We would send out another round of payments that we would also have paid time off for quarantining yourself should you be exposed, if should you be either exposed in close proximity to someone who tests positive, or you yourself test positive. If you have to quarantine, you should get some sort of a paid time to be home. It might not be your full pay, but it should be enough that people don't have to choose between being able to get a paycheck to pay rent or staying home and keeping you and your community safe. Because, for example, there's a lot of folks who are at the lower end of the pay scale who are going to avoid being tested, even if they think that they're sick, because they know that they're going to have to be home without pay for 2 weeks. So they go back to work out of necessity, out of desperation, and that helps this virus spread. So there should be something there. And then into next year with the new administration, I hope that we actually finally pass paid family leave, as well as a tax credit for childcare.
That was my next question, which is, about paid family leave. I think it is so incredibly important. I would love to ask you to just talk a little bit more about how we make paid family leave a bipartisan issue, how we sort of finally make it something that is possible, and if there's any hope also for child care tax credits or other support for working families who need childcare.
Well, paid family leave and the child care tax credit are both in President-elect Biden's plan of action. So there is real hope for that. It is also the position of most of the Democratic members that I know of. I don't know any Democrats who oppose it. How do we make paid family leave something that is bipartisan? Well, it's very simple. There's a proposal out there right now that I'm signed on to that would actually, it's called the Family Act. It would create basically an insurance program that employers would pay $2.50 a week, and you, the employee, would pay $2.50 a week. And it would, if you have to take time off from work, you would then get paid a certain percentage of your salary, depending on what you choose to pay into it. If you choose to pay a little bit more, then you can get 100% of your salary. If you only choose to pay a little bit less, you can get 60% of your salary for that time off. And when we've talked to employers and said, would you be willing to contribute a little bit over $150 a year to make sure that your employees had paid leave? Every one of them said, of course I would. That makes perfect sense. And so that's a plan that could be bipartisan. It's choice. You have the choice to choose what level you want to buy into it. Employers have the choice to pay into it, and that gives you paid family leave without it being something taxpayers have to pay for. The other aspect of this, there's another version that I do not support. This one is put forward by Ivanka Trump and Senator Rubio. Would provide for paid family leave, but you would take it out of your Social Security. So you would pay your salary by taking away your Social Security earnings, which I don't think you should rob your retirement in order to pay for family leave. But that's another option that's out there. So I think we can get there. There are ways that people can get there, and there are lots of smart folks who can come up with a way. We're the last developed nation that does not have paid family leave, and it puts us at an economic disadvantage if you think about competition against foreign nations. And we have a lot of Americans who are highly talented who have left the United States to go live and work in Europe or in Japan or in South Korea because there's paid family leave there. So we're losing some of our brightest minds because they're going to places where they can actually have a family and a career.
Yeah, it's not a choice anybody really thinks of that way anymore. I think the reality now is that people need to work to support their families and want to work because it's part of a full life. It feels to me like we have to find a way to support people in doing that, mothers and fathers. I think many people I've talked to, even though it's been an incredibly hard year, have felt more inspired than ever to help their fellow Americans or, fellow sufferers in this pandemic. Do you have any words of advice of people who want to advocate for families, mothers who want to get involved in their communities, or advocate for families? What do you think is the most important thing people can do right now to get involved?
I think the most important consideration is how much can you do? That is, it's great to start a whole social movement, but sometimes the biggest difference you can make is in your own small social network. So it may be something as simple as creating a pod with your, one other mom or one other family, so that you can then help each other survive and be together, making that commitment. So my daughter is able to go back to school at this point, but all the parents in her little kindergarten class, and her school was able to separate out. And so she has a small number of kids in her class. We've all agreed, we signed a social contract to be our own pod. And so, for example, every family in her class has agreed not to go anywhere for Thanksgiving and not to have anybody come to our homes for Thanksgiving. And we do a health check every single morning, whether or not our kids are in school. So there's stuff like that you can do to support another working mom. Sometimes things just get a little crazy. And if you can just be part of a pod with one other family where you make that commitment, you can help somebody else out. So a lot of times it's just within your local community, and you can make a huge difference. But if you want to do more, I say run for office. Run for office. Women have to be asked 7 times on average to run for office before they do. And I'm not talking about, being a senator or congressman, something as simple as a trustee for your local library board of trustees. Because there's a movement right now, for example, the Koch brothers and some very ultra conservative organizations have been bankrolling people to run for boards of trustees, because that's who decides what books are banned from your local public library. So if you care about what books your kids read in the local in the library, you might want to run for board of trustees. There's all sorts of ways that you can run and be a voice and bring that insight. Just as I discovered, the need for breastfeeding rooms because I showed up with a baby and I was living that experience. Your personal lived experience can make the world better for your community and for our nation. You may not even know it yet.
Mm-hmm. Well, that feels like a perfect place to stop. Thank you so much for your time, Senator Duckworth. And I know I'm very grateful. I wish I could be in your pod with you. But best of luck. And thank you again, and happy holidays.
Yes, happy holidays to everyone. Thank you.
Okay, I'm ready. Clear Blue Digital Pregnancy Test with Smart Countdown gives unmistakably clear results written in words, over 99% accurate, absolute clarity when you need it most.
Hello again, and thank you for being with us today. We all know there is no stopping a mom on a mission, whether it's serving as a Gretchen Carlson Fellow, volunteering as a member of a service organization, or leading efforts in her own community. Many women are using their voices to support the work of March of Dimes. You're about to hear from several mom advocates who will share their efforts to affect change.
I've been working hard in order to encourage our state legislature to increase sick leave options for families. I'd like to see paid family leave, not just for moms, but for anyone who needs to take care of a family member. I know personally when my daughter came early, I wasn't even eligible for family medical leave. And due to the goodness of the heart of my employer, I was able to have that time to spend with her in the hospital. But my employment was actually not protected legally. And there are so many people who aren't able to take that time because they can't risk their job, because they can't take unpaid time off. And I want to be able to give all those families the dignity that I was able to have sitting at my daughter's side in the NICU.
So I'm a member of Zeta Phi Beta Sorority Incorporated. So I'm going back to my sorority, and we're going to take the next couple of months and figure out how to synthesize what I've learned this year into an advocacy playbook for the sorority so that we can use it obviously for maternal mortality and March of Dimes issues, and specifically health equity, maternal health equity for Black women.
I actually got to testify for the maternal mortality and morbidity in Arizona, and it was such a great experience for me. I think it raises awareness and it will help, the research at the hospital. So I went to this hospital postpartum with your first child. You don't know what to expect. So I thought I was doing fine. And then 2 weeks later, something happened and all of a sudden I'm hemorrhaging. And thankfully I live close to a hospital. There's a lot of rural places in Arizona where people don't. So to have this proactive care and have implementation in the hospitals to help improve that, I think will be huge.
We're reaching out to pediatric offices and training them to do different screenings during kids' well child visits for things that impact mom's health and also the health of her future pregnancies. So one of those things is teaching pediatricians and empowering them to screen moms for depression, and just having that connection between the pediatrician and the mom, who the mom actually sees much more during her child's life than she sees her own OBGYN, can be really impactful in making the moms feel like somebody really cares about their own mental health.
So I've spent a lot of time advocating for maternal mortality this year and successfully helped get a bill completed in Colorado that will provide for a maternal mortality review board in our state.
Different reproductive health challenges. Then I almost died having my children, so it just reinvigorated my passion to continue to serve and advocate for women.
I am improving the lives of moms by helping to educate about our fertility medications for those who are trying to start a family. It starts with mom.
I'm improving the lives of moms in the U.S. by advocating for a more equitable and inclusive culture where ethnic differences can be embraced and all voices can be heard. It starts with moms.
I am improving the lives of moms in the U.S. by advocating for policies that ensure ongoing access to treatments and medicines. It all starts with moms.
I'm improving the lives of moms in the U.S. by listening to, learning from, and acting on what matters most to patients and their families. It starts with moms.
I am improving the lives of mums in the US by helping reset expectations, by investing in a more flexible workplace, allowing for a more sustainable work-life balance. It all starts with mums.
I'm improving the lives of moms in the US by counting the number of women we have in leadership, counting the number of women we have in succession plans, and making room at the table for women returning to work through our Return to Work program. It all starts with moms.
INFA and March of Dimes have partnered to create the Better Starts for All initiative that will deliver virtual and in-person care and education to women in maternity care deserts. Every mom and baby deserves a proper start in life, no matter their background. Please join us. Visit betterstartsforall.com.
Thanks again for staying tuned to It Starts With Mom Live. Next up is a panel discussion with March of Dimes President and CEO Stacy D. Stewart, Humana Foundation CEO Walter D. Woods, and Jeton Rowland, a Chicago area mother who has made it her mission to support new moms in need. I'm excited for this one.
Well, welcome everyone. My name is Stacy Stewart. I'm President and CEO of March of Dimes, and it certainly is a pleasure to have all of you here for our second national It Starts with Mom Live. And we are so happy you're joining us. We hope you all had a very happy and a very healthy Thanksgiving. I'm really excited about the conversation today because I'm being joined by two really, really incredible, remarkable catalysts for change, and two folks that are certainly my friends and two folks that I admire so just greatly. The first person I'm going to introduce is Jatan Rowland. Jatan is the founder of the Baby Rowland Foundation, and she's also March 9's ambassador. She's going to speak to us a little bit about her motherhood journey, her experiences that she had becoming a mom, and what has inspired her to help so many other moms. The second guest I'm going to introduce is Walter Woods. Walter is the CEO of the Humana Foundation, which is the philanthropic arm of Humana Inc. And he is focused nationally on closing the gap on healthcare inequity, really working at the foundation with Humana, the company, and around the country and communities to address all of the underlying issues around health equity. He's certainly been leading the effort and working with us at the March Dimes on expanding a partnership around maternal and infant health equity in several communities around the country. We're going to hear more about that. But both Jatan and Walter really understand the importance of supporting and advocating for moms and babies at every level, especially at the community level, especially moms and babies of color. And they've been working so incredibly hard to create the change in communities so that all moms and all babies are as healthy as possible. So I am so pleased to have both of you guys here. I'm going to start with Jatan. And Jatan, you have an amazing story. So I'd like for you just to start. Tell us about your journey to motherhood. You also experienced a difficult loss. And so can you please just talk a little bit about that and how that's impacted you and your family?
Absolutely. In 2015, I experienced a pregnancy loss. I went into preterm labor with my son at 22 and a half weeks. I watched him live for 10 minutes. He took 2 breaths before he passed away. During my pregnancy journey, I remember it being very difficult. I did have complications early on. At my first prenatal appointment, it was discovered that I had a fibroid that was the size of a golf ball, and the fibroid was blocking the birth canal. My doctor then immediately scheduled me to see a high-risk specialist. And after being evaluated, the high-risk specialist determined that I would just need a cesarean because the baby couldn't pass through the fibroid, but they would continue to monitor me and monitor this fibroid because at this point it can either get larger or stay the same. But as my pregnancy progressed, the fibroid started to grow. And with it growing, I started to have very high blood pressure. I've also started to have severe lower back pain. At times, I wasn't able to walk. So it was a very difficult time. I remember it like it was yesterday because at about 22 weeks, I was planning for my gender reveal for my friends and family. And I was shopping for decorations when I started to have this excruciating pain. I couldn't describe it. I couldn't describe the pain. I just knew it was very painful, but I knew it was something wrong. There was something going on. So my husband immediately took me to the hospital. And after being evaluated, it was determined that I was actually having contractions at that time. And my amniotic fluid was leaking. So the doctors informed me, we're not letting you out of the hospital until you have your baby. So they continued to monitor me. I stayed in the hospital for about 2 to 3 days. And on July 17th, I went into preterm labor and gave birth to my son. Me and my husband, we were devastated. It was like we were in the bad dream. We didn't understand why this was happening to us. It was just a really traumatic experience. And for a mom to lose a baby and to go through this, you start to blame yourself and you kind of wonder why. And you're like, why is this happening to me? Was it something that I could have done to prevent this? But although we kind of were devastated and experienced this, we never gave up hope. We prayed a lot. We stayed hopeful that we would have a successful pregnancy, and we did. I was able to conceive again, and 2 years later, we gave birth to our daughter, Olivia, who's now 3. She's a very rambunctious and active, very active 3-year-old, and she definitely keeps us on our toes, but we never forget our son. We always talk about him because he was a part of this family, although he lived for a short period of time.
Sure. Well, we're so glad about Olivia and so sorry about the experience of loss that you and your husband went through. But it's so inspiring though, because out of all of those experiences, it really helps you start a whole new thing to help other moms. So tell us more about what you're doing in your foundation and your work and what you're doing to help other moms who may have to unfortunately experience some of the things that you did as well.
Absolutely. Although we experienced this loss, we didn't want our son to be forgotten. We wanted to continue to honor his life, his short life, and we didn't want to focus on the sad part. So it encouraged us to start a not-for-profit foundation called the Baby Roland Foundation, where we provide first-time moms in underserved communities with the basic essentials to care for their newborn. And to honor our son every year, around his birthday on July 17th, we provide baby baskets to expectant moms in our community. Of course, since the time of COVID-19, things look a little different for us as it does for everyone, but we were able to still make an impact by donating diapers and hosting a virtual diaper collection drive for those in our communities in need as well.
So great. And I mean, even during this year, one of the things we've been saying is that, there have been a lot of things we've had to put on pause, even getting together for Thanksgiving, for a lot of us had to be put on pause. But unfortunately, during this pandemic, we can't put pregnancy on pause. If a woman was pregnant early in the year, she was pregnant through this pandemic, has probably given birth during this pandemic, and that continues. And so just trying to be there for so many moms has been really critical. And thank you so much, Shatan, for all that you've been doing. And it's so nice I know it must feel great to know that you've turned your pain into some real joy and something really important to someone else, and you're serving so many other families. So thank you for that.
Absolutely. Thank you.
I'd like to turn it to Walter, my friend Walter, who again is the CEO of the Humana Foundation. And we have this incredible partnership. I just have to say, I got a call from Walter some months ago who said that he had been looking at the work of the March Dimes and really wanted to figure out how to support the work that we were doing. And in many ways, was looking at my leadership and the leadership of so many of us at the March of Dimes. And I'm so grateful that he expressed to us that he was really inspired by the work we were doing. That made me feel really good. and he was sort of there, and Humana Foundation's been there for us at our most critical time. So thank you, Walter, for everything you've done with the March of Dimes. Talk to us about why you wanted to invest in these issues around health equity. Why is that so important to the Humana Foundation? And why is this collaboration with us so critical to your strategy?
Well, thank you again for this opportunity, and thank you for the story we just heard before my talk now. It's very humbling to hear the story and how you turned the pain into something positive. I think it speaks volumes to you personally and really shows an example of what we should all be doing in our lives, and how we should continue to not only address this issue, but others across our communities. We decided a few months ago, as we moved deeper into this pandemic, that we really wanted to make investments in partners, in developing partnerships to help us address health equity, continue to address health equities. The foundation has focused on health equity for the last 3 years. So the pandemic actually accelerated our strategies. We didn't really have to pivot or evolve because we were already on a path, recognizing that health equities needed to be addressed. And so we wanted to make a commitment to an organization like March of Dimes, because you are committed to specifically addressing maternal and child health inequity, and we wanted to be able to support you in that. We started out with a $50 million investment that we decided that we wanted to make, and we selected partners based on a criteria that we had internally, recognizing that March of Dimes was one of those partners that we wanted to make a $3 million commitment to help close the gap around this issue. We knew that it was disproportionately impacting communities of color, this issue, and so we wanted to support you in closing the gap. Our specific investment will focus on 6 communities across the United States, where Humana and the Humana Foundation are already working with partners to improve health and well-being. And our specific investment in March of Dimes really will build partnerships locally and with local organizations as well as private organizations to measurably improve maternal and infant health within each community. March of Dimes has been a leader in this space. We recognize that their work in these 6 communities will be specifically with technical assistance and targeted interventions. And so we know that the sharing of best practices really helps close the gap, and we want us to support that type of work.
And that support has really been critical to be able to work in these 6 communities, and now combining with funding support from other funders, we're expanding the number of communities. We've got another 2 communities in Louisiana we're working with as well. So we now have a collection of several communities that are working on the issue of maternal and infant health and the equity challenges that exist in those communities based on the support from Humana. But we're doing it at the March of Dimes not alone, but in partnership with others through an approach that we call collective impact. And what that really means is that we're bringing in all kinds of sectors in those communities, health officials, the government, local, state government, healthcare providers, hospitals, doctors, even other sectors like the transportation sector, employers, and others to address the other kinds of areas in the community that also impact a woman's health before her pregnancy, during her pregnancy, and afterwards. And we know those things to be whether or not women have access to high-paying jobs, right? Do they have income to help support themselves and their families? Can they get to those jobs? Are there transportation systems that make it easy for them to get to those jobs? Do they have access to safe, decent, affordable housing, right, to raise their families? You know, those are the things in life that really influence our health overall. It certainly have a big impact on a woman's health before she's pregnant and during her pregnancy. So this idea of collective impact is really critical. Walter, you really got it. When we talked to you about, we really want to approach these communities in a really collective sense and bring a lot of partners to the table. You understood that and why that made sense. But can you talk a little bit more about what excites you about this idea of collective impact as a way of addressing maternal and infant health in communities?
Absolutely. There are a couple of things that excite me about this. You know, when we talk about underserved communities or marginalized communities, we often forget that these communities are resourceful, they're resilient, they have a wealth of innovation that those words don't really tap into. It focuses on the negative, not the positive. Collective action, collective impact is a proven approach that really speaks to it takes a village. It takes all of us to recognize that we are part of the solution, and we have to be able to recognize that we need to work together. We've got to break those silos down. We have to tap into the resourcefulness of those communities that have been underserved for years, generations. And we have to tap into the resilience that they have had to develop as a result of being underserved. And we have to tap into the wealth of innovation that they've had to maintain to survive. And so a collective impact approach does that. It brings the community together. It really helps them. It's a framework that they can use to work together, to break down those silos, to identify and align what the underlying causes and system challenges are, to really start with that, to then build a common agenda. Once everybody is aligned, build an agenda so that everybody's on the same page and they're moving together forward, and they're developing this collection of force and moving it forward, addressing a specific issue. The backbone organization is March of Dimes in this case. And so there needs to be an organization that serves as a backbone, that provides the technical assistance and the targeted interventions, that has the experience. And that's what we recognize March of Dimes has been doing, has done, and continues to do. And we want it to be a part of that. We want to support that proven approach to solution development.
And I want to throw open a question to both of you all. And I think the idea of collective action and us all working together towards change, Walter, the way you just mentioned it, is so important. You know, here we are living in one of the most dangerous developed nations in the world in which to give birth. It is shocking. In the US, one of the wealthiest countries in the world, that we're seeing among other highly developed nations, some of the worst outcomes for moms and babies, just really should all shock us into action. and really wake us up to the fact that we have systemic failures in our society, leaving too many women to have to sort of fend for themselves, right? Too many women that are uninsured, too many women that live in places that don't have access to even a hospital that offers obstetric services, or too far away from an OBGYN for prenatal visits, or not even a midwife or a doula to support them along with their healthcare provider in their pregnancy. So many gaps, right, in the system. So just to come back to it, Walter, I'll come to you and then Jatan. Walter, if you had a wish list, or you're a fairy godmother wand or something, godfather wand, what would you want to say? What would you want to see different in this country for moms and babies? What do you think is the one thing we all can do to kind of help to start to address this issue in the communities for all women around the country?
I think it's really to advocate for each other, to really recognize that we are connected. Whether we believe it or not, we are. And as a person and a community of privilege, and all of us on this conversation are, because we were able to get out of bed this morning and continue to think and continue to move whatever our agenda is forward, we have an obligation to share our privilege, to help those that are voiceless, to help those that no one else advocates for, and to use our privilege in a way that supports and gives them the resources they need to continue to live a successful, healthy life. Pretty simple, but yet it still seems to elude us. To me, it's just that continues to be what the lesson of this year, this most disruptive year of my life, and I guess everybody else's life on this conversation. I can't wait to get to the end of this year. It's been the longest year ever. Is for us to think differently about how we advance our strategies, our missions, and to do it in a way that's equitable and inclusive, because we all are a part of the solution. We cannot expect the government to take care of something, the private sector to take care of something, and the nonprofits to take care of something. We've got to do it together, and we've got to make it sustainable. When we work together, our solutions are sustainable because everyone is involved in making sure that they're successful. This really should not be this hard. Yeah, our conversations should not be focused on these conversations that we're having. There's so many other issues that our planet is facing right now. We should not have to focus on these issues that should be so obvious to us, but they're still not. So we are going to continue to, and the Humana Foundation is going to continue to support March of Dimes in the way that we have, in the way that we are, because we recognize that you are making a difference and you are addressing issues that a developing nation should not have to deal with. This is uncalled for. And I think I had a moment this week where I sent you a text about an article that I found in Glamour magazine that talked about this issue not being one of low income, because obviously it impacts low income people, but it also impacts college educated women of color. 5.2 times more than their white counterparts are at risk of pregnancy.
Yes.
Simply because they're asking questions. They have they have a birth plan that they're talking to their professionals about, and that's considered intimidating. That's not right. There's no reason for this. We should be able to ask questions, as many as we need to make ourselves feel comfortable, so that the environment that our babies are born into is nurturing and supportive, not the other way around.
And I think there's nothing more important than a woman standing up for herself and for her baby.
Absolutely.
And advocating for herself. That is what we want more of, not less of. And we should not penalize or victimize a woman for being an advocate for her own health. Jatan, tell me how important that is to be in a position to advocate for your health. And how important is it for a health system and health providers to respect that voice, to listen to that voice, and to respond to that voice?
It's very important because if you have a partnership with your provider, then it makes the relationship much easier. They'll listen to you. And it's important for the provider to listen to you as well. And as Walter mentioned, you have to advocate for yourself. So being an advocate for yourself can kind of eliminate some of what's being caused, especially if the provider is listening and taking that extra step to provide special care for that individual.
Well, let me just say that you all are the most amazing advocates that I know. And we are so proud to be partnered with you all. And we're proud to call you our partners. And we're gonna stay in this fight together, and we're gonna pull more people into it. And I think it's so appropriate that this whole session is called It Starts with Mom, because it starts with you. It starts with each one of us. It starts with every woman. It starts with every partner, every man, every person, to say, we are not going to tolerate these kinds of outcomes for moms and babies. We demand more. And we're going to respect the women who demand more for themselves, because we know that they're looking out not only for their own health, but the health of every future generation. So Jatan and Walter, I want to say thank you for being our panelists today and being so amazing and such great leaders in everything that you do. And I just want to say again, thank you for joining everyone. It Starts with Mom Live. This is an incredible session. And as our host pointed out earlier, tomorrow is Giving Tuesday. So I hope that you will consider supporting our work at the March of Dimes. It is so critical, especially this year. Every nonprofit has been so devastated by everything that's gone on. And we know so many families have too. Economically, this has been a very, very tough and challenging time. But what I would ask is that if you are able and willing to, please join us in this fight for all moms and babies. It's really easy to do it. Just go to marchofdimes.org/Giving Tuesday. Please don't forget us. We're here. And we would appreciate all of your support now and ongoing. Next in our program, I'm so excited that we're going to hear from two more great leaders, two women I greatly admire. The Chicago Mayor, Jatan, you're mayor, right? Chicago Mayor Lori Lightfoot, and also my hometown mayor, Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms, both of whom want to share some thoughts with all of you all on using your voice at the local level to lift up moms and families. So thanks again and for joining us, and my best wishes on a very happy and healthy holiday. Please don't forget to wear your mask, get the vaccine when it's out, and stay safe and stay well. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'm Mayor Lori Lightfoot, and I want to thank the panel for speaking to the foundational issue of maternal care. Everything really does start with mom. I want to especially commend March of Dimes Ambassador Jaytwan Rowland for her work with the Baby Rowland Foundation. Throughout its 80-year history, the March of Dimes has served as a constant source of strength and support for mothers and babies here in Chicago and across the country. That's a need that's become ever more important as we navigate the incredible challenges of the COVID-19 crisis. Today in Chicago and across the region, March of Dimes has undertaken a multi-pronged effort to ensure that moms have access to the tools and information they need to support their children. It also goes without saying that this issue has been a priority of mine since even before I became mayor. Here in Chicago, we have done so much to support city's families, and particularly our mothers, with programs like Family Connects Chicago, a service designed to support the health and well-being of mothers, newborns, and their families by providing home visits with registered nurses for no cost shortly after birth. But we also support mothers and babies in a variety of indirect ways. One of the earliest accomplishments of my administration that I'm most proud of is passing Fair Workweek legislation. As I said at the time of its passage, I couldn't help but think of my own mother as I was growing up, because she struggled to navigate the uncertainty of not knowing when she'd be working. Now, because of our Fair Workweek measure, Chicago's employees, including mothers, have predictable pay, the right to decline schedule changes, the choice of additional work hours when available, and the right to rest and request a flexible working arrangement. Measures that are truly transformative to the lives of mothers having to take care of their children. But our work goes well beyond these programs and continues to this very day. That's why I encourage every mother to help us craft public policy by using your voices to speak up and organize. Whether by reaching out to local officials or community organizations, or by using social media to find each other in your own neighborhoods or across the city. This is truly a foundational issue, which is why we must continue to do everything we can to support our mothers and groups like March of Dimes in order for Chicago to move forward as one city that is more prosperous and equitable for every resident. So I want to thank you again for taking part in today's discussion. Please keep up the good work and remember to stay safe.
Hi, I'm Atlanta Mayor Keisha Lance Bottoms. It's my pleasure to join you, and thank you to my friend Stacy Stewart for leading the March of Dimes in such an impactful way. The March of Dimes is now more important than ever as women and families are facing the stresses of the COVID-19 pandemic. It's so important that we recognize that we are not alone. Organizations like the March of Dimes gives women especially the incredible support that we need to navigate this new normal. On any given day, I go from being a short order cook to being mayor, sometimes all at once. And I have it pretty easy. Compare that with women in our communities who don't have the option of staying at home with their kids or don't have the ability to telework. Our frontline workers, many of whom are in the service industry, putting themselves at risk each and every day just to make sure that their families are able to keep food on the table and keep a roof over their heads, still trying to hold their households together, all the while trying to make sure that their kids are protected and getting what they need by way of education. It's tough right now. It's part of the reason that the city of Atlanta is always proud to partner with the March of Dimes, because we know that you are constantly thinking about ways that women and our families can be supported. In Atlanta, we recently launched the Atlanta Economic Mobility Plan. It's a first of its kind strategy that shifts focus, support, and resources to those who have not been able to participate or be a part of the prosperity and opportunity in Atlanta. We are allocating at least 70% of our small business support services to minority and women-owned businesses. We also recently sponsored a series of emotional wellness summits for women to offer support on dealing with the now normal of the coronavirus. This is extremely important as we know that so many women and families are facing anxiety and dealing with depression related to COVID-19. Whether you are a mayor, whether you are a school teacher, whether you are a mom who takes care of your family each and every day, all day long, we know that's the hardest job of them all. Your voice is important, because so many people are feeling isolated right now, and so many women are feeling as if nobody understands and nobody can relate to the struggles that we're facing within our households. But just know that you aren't alone. Take every opportunity that you have to elevate your voice. Take every opportunity that you have to show your emotions, because we're all dealing with them. And it's often helpful to each of us to know that there are other people out there who understand the challenges that we're facing. But at the end of the day, know that we are not the first generation to face challenges. And as in generations past, keep standing tall. And we know that you will get to the other side of these challenges. This period of time will be an example for our children's children as to what it means to be resilient, what it means to have hope, and what it means to believe that there is something better in store for all of us if we just continue to push forward. Thank you again to the March of Dimes. I'm grateful to be a supporter of yours and grateful to have the partnership that you offer to the city of Atlanta.
It Starts with Mom is really an effort to provide enhanced education and tools and information to women. Any woman can visit our website at any time at marchofdimes.org to get more information. If she's got questions, if she's got challenges, right now we're even expanding our ability to provide and connect women with telehealth services.
Luckily, like, the baby and I were okay, and they did such an amazing job taking care of us. But I learned pretty quickly when I was in the hospital that, you know, you can have a birth plan and you can have all these things filed away, but it rarely ends up going to plan.
Most likely you know someone who has been impacted by infertility. It's very, very common. And you're right, it is a very emotionally draining time to go through.
Yeah. And what you guys do, I think, is so amazing. I mean, we became so close with the doctors, and they really become like family. I mean, I cried when I found out I was pregnant, and like I took pictures with the nurses. I mean, what you guys do to help people is you change people's lives. I'm like getting emotional thinking about, you know, what you guys do.
What I finally realized was, number one, to forgive myself, that not everything was going to be perfect. And some days were going to be super hard. And I was like, not going to be there for dinner, or I wasn't at the school event. But there were other times where I could be a lot of places and lean in.
And I think what we're finding is that if we can encourage women to have the courage to ask for what they want, the payoff may not be today or tomorrow, but the payoff is going to be on the back end of this, is that they're going to be grateful for those types of companies who actually supported them when they needed that support most.
I wanted to have this like really beautiful natural birth and go through this whole experience. And so when I found myself admitted to the hospital and everything going haywire, I was terrified. You know, I never imagined myself in that position.
Be an advocate for yourself, because if you're not an advocate for yourself, then who else will?
You know, it's important to be successful. It's important to achieve your dreams and accomplish your goals. But, you know, don't lose sight of that big accomplishment of having that little person who loves you and relies on you and just being a mom.
I stepped up and became an advocate with March of Dimes because my child's life depended on it.
Yeah, I stepped up and became an advocate of March of Dimes because we have to use our voice to make change. No one else will do it for us.
I stepped up and started using my voice even more because my voice matters and I will be heard.
There is no ideal pregnancy. There is no ideal way to parent or to get through this time in your life. All there is for you to really do it your best, and your best is enough, and that for all of us to reach out and support each other.
Thank you all again for joining us today, and thank you to our panelists and guests for making it so special. I've so enjoyed being your host for today's It Starts with Mom Live. Tomorrow is Giving Tuesday, and if you were inspired by today's program to use your voice for change, please consider donating to March of Dimes. Your contribution will go toward their important work for mothers and babies. You can make a donation at their website, marchofdimes.org/Giving Tuesday. As we finish up, I wanted to say thank you to the campaign partners for It Starts with Mom: Cisco, Clearblue, EMD Serrano, The Honest Company, Macy's, Nook, Ovia Health, and Romper. You can learn more about It Starts with Mom and get resources on navigating pre-pregnancy, pregnancy, and postpartum challenges at itstartswithmom.org. Be well, be safe, and happy holidays.